So we have Bonney Brown and Diane Blankenburg of Humane Network with us this morning, which is fantastic. And we're going to talk about getting your paws on more money. You can raise funds for animals even during a pandemic. And I'm going to let you know a little bit about Bonney and Diane. So Bonney Brown and Diane Blankenburg are co-founders and together lead Humane Network, a team of expert consultants that help organizations across the country to be more successful in a wide range of ways through a variety of affordable services. Bonney was the CEO and Diane was the Development and Community Programs Director of Nevada Humane Society. They both work for Best Friends Animal Society in key roles. Respectively, they have 30 and 20 years of experience in the field of animal welfare to draw upon to help organizations achieve their goals. Bonney and Diane, welcome, and the microphone is yours.
That's great. Great to be here, Stacy. And welcome, everyone. It's wonderful of you to make time to learn more about fundraising today. And I just want to give a special thanks to Stacy and her team for hosting this really amazing event today. So to start off, I'm just going to review what we're going to cover with you. There's 3 areas we're going to hit on because this is pretty concise. We're going to move fast, but we hope to give you at least a high-level understanding of these 3 key things and be able to give you enough so that you can get going and also share with you how you can learn more. So here we go. Today we're going to cover why and how raising funds during the pandemic is totally doable. We're going to talk about how to begin to engage potential major donors. And lastly, we're going to touch on a few simple ideas that you can use in the next 2 months to make the most of the season of giving. So with that, I'm going to have my colleague Diane take it away.
Thank you, Bonney. I'm glad to be here also, and I appreciate this opportunity to connect with all of you. And in our work with Humane Network, we have been hearing regularly from either clients or just fellow colleagues in the field that this isn't a good time to raise funds. People feel guilty about asking people and therefore have been reluctant to pursue it. But the truth is, even though it is certainly presented more challenges, people really haven't stopped caring about the animals, just as we haven't. And just because we have other pretty significant concerns regarding COVID and you know what's going on in the country in general, they still do care about animals, and they are thinking about them and are still concerned about their fate. And they've actually shown, and I think this was mentioned in the earlier presentation, that some organizations have even done better because there are just opportunities for more engagement because a lot of people have had more time. We have seen statistics that social media usage is up because of that. And many people are just, feeling isolated, obviously, and just welcome the opportunity to hear about what's going on and to bring more purpose and a sense of meaning into their lives for a cause that they really care about. So it actually can be a really great time to reach out. And I think it just depends on how you go about it. But for the most part, supporters would be glad to hear about what's going on, and even if they aren't in the position to be able to help right now. And as we know, with the craziness of our economy right now, there's a lot of people that really are struggling financially, but that's not everyone. And there are those that can't afford to help and may just need the opportunity, or at least to be made aware of the opportunity. So, and as I mentioned earlier, even those that can't donate still want to hear about it, and really helps to stay connected. And I think the previous presenter talked about that too, of just having wanting to hear something good and not always being asked for something. So the fundamentals really are the same during this time, even if the way in which they get implemented are different. But there's a great quote that Bonney and I love to use that just really simplifies the whole process, and it's from Richard Avanzino. It says, "You do good work, you tell people about it, and then you ask them to help. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've heard from many people that it's just they're uncomfortable about asking right now, and they feel a little awkward about it, and they really don't know what to say. But the one thing you can do is to approach them in whatever manner you would like, whether it's phone, email, appeal letter, but just to reach out and acknowledge the current situation and let them know that you're thinking about them and their families, including their animals, their furry family members. And the best way to do this is to share an uplifting story. As I mentioned, the earlier presenter talked about sending out the video of kittens being fed. But we're fortunate, I guess, in this field that we're not at all without many wonderful stories. So it's just a matter of capturing those and sharing those stories that makes people feel good. It helps them understand what, if they are already donors, what their money is being used for, and just makes them have something to smile about in these crazy times right now. And then ultimately to thank the supporters and let them know how much we appreciate all the support they have given in the past. And with any story, you obviously need a good photo. I think the old saying that we've all heard, that a picture's worth 1,000 words, is never truer than in our field. So we want to make sure that we have good photos, and be sure that they're being captured as you go along. There's nothing worse than hearing about, and this is a situation that I was in, since I was often responsible for trying to pull together these messages to send out, and to have a great story and realize we missed an opportunity to get the photo. So you want to be sure that you are capturing those as you go, but also that they're good photos. And we even sat down sometimes with our volunteers, or even some of our regular staff, that maybe that wasn't their main job, but to teach them how to take photos. And I think the number one mistake I see is where the animal is too distant, or they're looking to the side. The ideal is a closely cropped photo looking into the eyes as much as you can of an animal, because that's how you create that connection. So the other, I think, problem sometimes with our efforts is that we don't get specific enough. People really want to know that what they're doing is making a tangible difference, and especially in these times. So if it really helps if you can make a real specific request. So maybe you need to cover medical costs for an injured cat, or you need funds for a special diet or special care for senior animals, or spay neuter. But whatever it is, just be very specific and tell people what is needed and what the funds will enable you to do. I just believe we're not imposing, and in fact, we're really helping people do something that makes them feel good. So we're really doing them a favor, and hopefully we can approach it that way, and it also makes it a little less intimidating. So ultimately, focusing on individual animals is the most impactful way to connect with donors and to increase your donations. Stories that are clear, concise, and have an emotional element are going to engage your donors in your work. So now I'm going to switch it back to Bonney.
Okay, thanks, Diane. So we are switching gears. We want to cover these 3 areas for you. So moving on to the next one, which is getting started with major gifts fundraising, especially if this is new for your organization. People often find it especially mysterious or intimidating, and they often feel that it's going to be outside their abilities. And that really is not the case. I think one reason why people feel that way is because we've heard about say major gifts fundraising at universities or large organizations where there's a massive department of people working on this. But in fact, major gifts fundraising can be scaled for organizations of all sizes. And to start off, I want to share with you what the single most valuable asset you have is, and that is your list of donors and supporters. Why is that? Because if you have a list of donors and supporters, you can always raise funds, always. So small groups we encounter often do not have a donor database. We've talked to people who have all their stuff in a shoebox, or people who have various Excel lists all over the place. But it's really important to gather all of your various contacts into one place. And there are inexpensive fundraising databases available to you. I think someone speaking to you later today is going to share an example of one. One we've worked with groups on is Little Green Light, which is very affordable. But you can even get started with an Excel spreadsheet. It's just important to get started and get everything in one place. And when you think about who to put on this list, you really want to include all of your contacts. And ideally, you want to be able to tag them so you know, for example, if they were an adopter or a volunteer, or if they used your low-cost clinic. And it's really important to know that volunteers are frequently cross over to become donors. They are good donor prospects, as are clinic users. And adopters can often be counted on to participate in events. So you want to hang on to all of these as well as the very obvious donors. So what is a high donor? And the answer to this question is going to depend very much on the size of your organization. It could be that a $100 donor is a high donor for your organization right now. You can change that over time, but that may be the right size to be looking at and thinking about for your organization right now. So if you have this information on all of your past donors, it's easy to sort it so that you can look at who has given the most over the course of this year and last year, and to whoops, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. You want to look at that sorted list and find out who has given the most this year and last year, combined or separately. In any case, what you want to arrive at is a list of the top 10 donors to your organization. Once you have this list, you can make the decision to dedicate just 1 hour a week to donor cultivation. And you're going to want to block that time on your calendar to make sure that it absolutely happens. And you will need to commit to making personal contact with just one person on that list each week. And if you do that in just 10 weeks, you will have begun down that road to cultivation of donors for major gifts. So this is just this crucial first step of creating a habit that's really going to powerfully increase your ability to raise funds in the future. So, you know, the next step, where to begin with this, again, is often intimidating for people, but it's really to make a phone call. And you want to spend this call time with the person, getting to know them. It's about having a friendly conversation. You want to thank them for their past support. And one thing you do not want to do in these initial calls with people is ask for money. I think Sandy talked about this too, that you don't want to always be there with a handout. Initially, you're trying to build a relationship. You're trying to learn about this donor. So during this call, you want to be sure that you're also sharing. That's what builds a relationship or a friendship, is mutual sharing. So you want to share what your organization is doing, and stories are the perfect thing. As Diane just talked about, we never have a shortage of them, but you'll want to think through the stories that you'd like to share. And be sure that you have those ready and with you as notes before you get on the call. But you also want to be sure you're spending plenty of time drawing the donor out. You want to ask questions, and you'll be amazed at how much you can learn just by asking why they first donated to your organization, or if they've been a lifelong animal lover or came to love animals over the course of life. Just asking people about their pets can go a long way. So again, you just want to think about this as you might if you were trying to build a friendship with someone. That's what this is about. One important difference is you want to be sure that you're taking very careful notes about really everything that they say. And you want to keep those notes in the donor's file going forward so that you can refer to them for your next call. So after the call, you want to be sure that you are following up. And right away, at least within the next 24 hours, you want to send an email or a note in the mail thanking them again and expressing your appreciation for their time and their past support. And you want to be sure you say that you enjoyed talking with them. Remember in your communication, because this initial call is step one in a series of efforts that you will make to engage people further in the organization and really to get to know you and for you to get to know them. So remember, as Diane mentioned, the power of photos. Over time, you're going to want to develop a customized appeal letter that you will be sending to these select donors that you're working and cultivating. And you are working up to a point where you will be able to make an ask for a significant gift. So again, you've got to start by planting the seeds of cultivating and developing that relationship. And a crucial element in cultivating any relationship is thank you. And Sandy talked about that too. So whenever anyone gives, there really must be a thank you. It's our job to cultivate the spirit of giving to help the animals. Gratitude in general promotes warm feelings. It creates the climate for more giving, and most importantly, it builds that relationship. So I've had many donors tell me that they are not giving again because there was no thank you forthcoming. So while we can excuse ourselves for being busy, this is a really, really crucial element. So what if you're hearing this right now and you are thinking to yourself, well, there is absolutely no way I'm going to do that. No way. I think to Sandy's point earlier, this is a team activity. It's not a solo activity. So you want to engage others in your work. And if your organization isn't there yet, it is possible to grow it and to attract volunteers. And you want folks who are willing to do this kind of work as well as dig out feral cats after the snowstorm at 3 a.m. You also want folks who have a professional background who are not going to be running around trapping feral cats, but they may very well be willing to hop on the phone with a donor. So maybe you have an outgoing board member or a very social volunteer, and that person might be the right person to get started. Now, there is a lot to Major Gifts fundraising, and obviously we don't have time to delve into it further today. However, we do help organizations with that, but I also want to highly recommend Amy Eisenstein's website, which has a lot of wonderful information, and I hope that you'll take a look at that. It will help you with the initial steps as well as future steps. So with that, I'm going to pass things back to my colleague, Diane.
Great, thanks. And before we wrap up today, we wanted to talk briefly about the end of year fundraising opportunities. And just as in the retail industry, most nonprofits actually receive most of their donations in the final quarter of the year. And as you can see, the statistics here that some even bring as much as 50% of their donation income from end of year asks. In an ideal world, and I know this is challenging now, but it always has been, I think, for animal welfare organizations, each organization would have a detailed plan that would outline their fundraising needs and activities for the whole year. And if you have a plan, that's great. But as many groups do not have that plan. And the good news is it's not too late. Obviously, there's many things that you can include that you are types of fundraising activities that you do throughout the year, but also can be part of your end of the year plan, like the ones that are listed here. But you really want to focus on what it's going to look like over the next 2 months as we close out 2020. Direct mail is still super popular and an effective strategy for year-end asks, followed up with emails. And most people, and I know this may sound interesting in that we are just bombarded by so much information from so many different ways and so many different venues, but people still need to see or hear something at least 7 times before they actually act. And so you want to just be sure you're covering all the bases. And obviously some people respond better to different methods. So you want a variety of ways as well as the volume of ways. And if you can't do everything, don't let that stop you from doing something. If you're basically going to focus on one area, just put your effort into that. And I think shortly after I finish up here, Bonney's going to talk about some real specific things that you can do that it can help you. And ultimately, your end of the year fundraising is part of your regular marketing and development throughout the year. So ideally, as we said earlier, you would want to start again in January to look at the plan for 2021 and be able to work out the marketing avenues for your various supporters, as well as bringing in new supporters, and be able to hopefully increase the communication and therefore increase your donations. So positive, fun messaging generally gets the best results, and that's where Bonney's going to talk about some of those shortly.
Okay, so thank you, Diane. I'm going to speed through 7 slides, sharing ideas or themes that you can adapt and use over the course of November and December to maximize your holiday donations. Now, these are just ideas. We hope that they inspire you to come up with your own creative ideas that fit really well with your organization. There's also nothing wrong with just adopting and using one of these themes for your holiday fundraising. You know, the details of what it becomes is something that you and your team will work out. But just to get your creativity flowing, here goes with 7 ideas that have worked for other organizations. So the first one is Lights of Love. This is a donation campaign that involves tribute lights and people contributing a relatively modest amount of money in memory or in honor of a pet or a person for the holidays, and it involves a light display. These campaigns can be very effective. It can also, be a theme that you use across all of your different venues for what you're promoting. And we have done this and can share more information with you, but there's also lots of information online. Many groups have done events like this. The second is the giving tree concept, and with most of these, they can be done either outdoors or virtually this year. This is a program that's worked well for a lot of different shelters. It takes on a lot of different, details, and that you can sort of formulate it to work well for your organization, but it's a theme that you might want to consider. Another one is the 12 Saves of Christmas. Depending on your community, you want to think about how you label this event. It could include other holidays, or you could simply call it Celebrating the Top Rescues of 2020 or some other name. What it is a series of daily emails recounting the best rescues of the year, thanking the donors, and periodically asking for end-of-year donations as well. Some groups turn these into little videos that can be also quite effective, But when we did this at Nevada Humane Society several years back, I would often get stopped in the supermarket by people who would say, "Oh my God, I can't wait to see the next animal that's going to be the next save of the day." So it really did engage the community. And Reno is a sort of medium-sized community, definitely a small city of about 410,000 people. It became very popular, and people were sharing it with each other. And lots of organizations have done this since. So you might want to think about that. A holiday pet photo contest. I recently spoke to someone who did a pet photo contest and raised $18,000 and said it was really pretty low effort and way more successful than they thought. So you may want to consider that one. Home for the Holidays is actually an adoption campaign that's hosted by Helen Woodward Animal Center. However, you can use this adoption campaign to double as a fundraising theme. You can see one of the posters here. Someone has used it as a foster program. But you know, the idea of getting all the animals into homes for the holidays is an appealing one that resonates for people and could be a great theme in general. A thankathon. This is something you can do any time of year, but it can be especially resonant around the holidays. And that means calling donors to thank them. You would want to engage all of your board members and maybe a group of volunteers or key staff in making these calls to thank people. That would be a wonderful way to reinforce your other efforts throughout the holiday season, and just to be sure that your organization is top of mind or favorite, as Sandy said. So that's another idea for you. And one that works really well in the last 10 days of the year is the clock is ticking. Many people, as Diane said, give in these last 2 to 3 months of the year. And we still have time to get the word out. This was an effective fundraiser that we used. Tax laws have changed, but still for many people, donating as a tax deduction is part of what they do. So you want to be reminding people of that as you count down towards the very end of the year. So with that, I'm going to hand things back to Diane.
Thank you. This is one of my favorite quotes in regards to this particular subject area of fundraising. And it says, "Fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving." I know in general that this function is not something that most people like to do or even like the idea of doing. But I think if we can focus on it this way, that we really are helping people have that joy of giving to something they care about, it just makes it a lot easier. So we hope that, you know, one of these ideas that we presented today would inspire you and give you a chance to bring in more funds for your organization, especially over the last 2 months of this year. And in closing, we just wanted to say that, you know, whatever way you decide to raise the funds, you just don't have to feel bad about it. You don't need to worry about asking people to help. You're asking them to help the animals who are dependent upon us, really, and your potential audience is the many, many people in your community that also care deeply, as you do, about the animals. So as we said earlier, again, this is another one of my favorite quotes. It's need to do good work, tell people about it, and then ask them to help. People are still there and are thrilled to be able to help. So we just need to reach out to them in some way that's going to resonate, and they really will come. So I believe now we have time to answer some questions, but just want you to know that if there's any other questions you think of later, or you'd like any additional information on any of the things that we talked about, we'd be more than happy to talk to you directly. And this is our contact information that's listed here. So thank you very much for the time and attention, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Excellent. As you can tell, everybody, I've got my hair pulled back, so this means I'm seriously working here. This is incredible, the information we've got. So Bonney and Diane, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Diane, if you want to flip your webcam on, that would be fantastic. People can see you. So I have questions, and folks can keep submitting their questions. One question I'd just like to ask either one of you, there's like a $300 deduction with the CARES Act or something this year, and some organizations are choosing to like really promote that as an option for encouraging donations. Can you just share a little bit about that benefit and how maybe that would fit in our plans?
Yeah, that's a great comment, Stacy. You know, I think it would be fantastic to add that to your fundraising appeal, to mention to people how it works. You could promote it on your website so people know, especially one really increasingly important thing now during the pandemic is having a really easy donation interface, and that would be a great place to promote that on your website. You can also, of course, reference it at the bottom of emails and other appeals that you are making to people. But, you know, one way to know how the donor experience is with your organization is to actually try donating online yourself and see how the process works. Do you feel confident that the donation went through? I've tested some, and I'm not even really sure if they got my donation or not. And so you want to be sure that there's a nice message. And as Sandy said, you know, those warm touches, when it'd be nice if you could arrange for a pop-up that includes an animal, and that's really possible with most platforms. It just takes a little work. So the time and effort to do that, you know, it's probably not your thing necessarily, the people who are on the discussion today, but you can find a volunteer who'd be happy to help. There are many people with technical skills who'd love to get involved and help you with that. And Stacy, I'm not sure if I answered everything about that, but if you want to add more, please do.
Yeah, no, I think that's good information. I've seen a lot of emails come across the wires about how, you know, it's important to try and think about that as an opportunity this year for promoting year-end donations. A couple of questions have come across the wire from very small groups, just sort of saying, you know, where should we start? You know, if you were in my shoes and we were just starting out, and I know Bonney did wear those shoes at one point in time, many, many years ago when our organizations were very small. And the decision is, you know, what's the first step to take? You know, if you had a brand new group, where would you spend your time?
Well, you know, the Richard Avanzino quote always comes back to it for me. One really is do good work, and then you have to be doing something to raise money, basically. So, you know, you do something good and you tell people about it, and that's the part where animal welfare organizations tend to fall down. If I was starting out again, I would focus a lot of energy on building that donor database, because that really is your most valuable asset. I mean, we used to table everywhere and try to get people's addresses and email addresses, and it's still something you can do. Tabling right now during the pandemic is harder, but there are online ways, including social media, that you can try to use to make contacts and build an audience that you can reach out to consistently. And then I would start communicating with them by email, because it's a very cost-effective way to reach people. Diane, you may have a different answer to that, though.
Well, I think well, no, I wouldn't be any different. I certainly would support everything you said. I think one of the things that, you know, we did in the early days of Nevada Humane Society, because it wasn't so much that we're starting, but we're starting over, kind of how I looked at it, because we had a lot of negative publicity when we started there. And it really, again, was just getting our name out there. It wasn't even necessarily in the beginning asking for anything. It was just the telling that Bonney was talking about, telling them the progress that what our goals were and what we had accomplished, and just getting our name out there in every possible way we could, so that when people think about wanting to contribute, that our name came to mind. And it came to mind in a positive way, because we were sharing all the good stuff that we were doing.
Excellent. So I have an executive director question. We have an overwhelmed, overstressed, thinly staffed executive director, and thinking about like trying to bring volunteers on board to get them to help, but you're spending a lot of time retraining staff from an operations standpoint. And then you also have to train your volunteers, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. And so, any advice for this person?
It's a little hard to know without knowing if the organization has paid staff. If you do have any paid staff, I would focus effort, and even if you didn't, I'd probably focus effort on trying to hire somebody who had the skill set to help hit the ground running quickly. Now, if you're just a startup, that's not possible. If it's really, you're just founded the organization, but at that point, you want to put together a board of directors, and organizations go through different phases of development. And at the beginning, having a working board is a very reasonable thing. I do feel that when Cindy said this is not a solo activity, it's a team sport. I may be butchering her comments, but basically, you've got to involve other people. And I think thinking strategically and maybe just slowing down for a few hours and closing the door and thinking about the most crucial first step could be really important for this person right now. If I had a payroll, I would hire someone with the skill set to hit the ground running and help me. If I didn't, I would be looking to build a board of directors who had skills and the time and the willingness, who really believed in the organization and really wanted to do what it was going to take to make it successful. Diane might have an interesting take on this too.
I don't have really anything different, but I guess that there was one of the slides or one of the comments in our presentation about just doing something with what you do have. It may be limited, so how you I guess what I'm saying is you don't necessarily have to have a huge team to be able to get started. Certainly helps. So I think there's a lot of little things you can do yourself. And even though I know that probably isn't the answer somebody wants because they're already feeling overwhelmed, but I think there can be, and that you can also maybe it is kind of hard to use volunteers because you need to be sure you have the right volunteers, but you could find an Uber volunteer. And I can give you an example of what we did. Bonney talked about the Thankathon. It was part of a regular program that we had ongoing, but we found this volunteer who absolutely loved making the calls, and she became best friends like with everybody. And then we invited them in, and she would know every child and furry child that they had, and but that was just something she was really good at and really liked. But it is important to have oversight with that, and we had scripts put together because you want to be sure they're representing you correctly. So it is possible to bring in a volunteer into those positions, although I do agree with Bonney that it would be better if you could have staff.
Initially, sorry, Dan, didn't mean to step on. Initially at Nevada Humane Society, we didn't have enough money for volunteer coordinators, so Diane identified one of these potential Uber volunteers, and she did mentor and train her, and she ran the volunteer program for some time. A volunteer ran the volunteer program, and so when there was communication that needed to happen, it was with this one person instead of 25 or 50 volunteers. And that worked very well for quite some time. And we also Diane just helped an organization in Las Vegas recruit a board of directors. The president was where this executive director is, ready to tear all of her hair out because she was doing everything, all of the heavy lifting herself. And we were able to find through a recruitment process, was it 5 or 6 people, Diane, who are going to join that board? So it is possible. It's easier with some help for sure, but call on your friends and family, try to get someone to help you so you can get to a place where you're building and not just treading water.
This is a quick question I hope it's a quick question actually, which is to use paper or not paper. That is the question. So do you feel like we still have to have paper in I have had some heated conversations about not doing paper as part of our fundraising efforts.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on your organization, perhaps. If you were just starting out, I think it might be possible to be totally paperless and focus only on virtual fundraising. However, I would contend that many older donors do not aren't going to respond. You're just going to miss them. And we are undergoing a major transfer of wealth as baby boomers begin to pass on and give money in their wills. So you could be missing a significant opportunity, but is it a decision you can make? Absolutely so. I would probably not advise an established organization to go that way. I know of one organization that put slips in all of their thank you letters to donors, saying that they were no longer going to be sending paper thank yous. They were going to only do electronic thank yous. And I will tell you, it angered a substantial number of donors. And these are your older, heavy hitter donors. So I just would think really clearly and slowly and carefully before I made a major decision to change. If you're starting out, you're in a different position, but keep in mind you may be sacrificing some percentage of the donor population. That may be a sacrifice you're willing to make.
Could I just add one thing to that? I also think it depends on what you're sending. So I think there could be an opportunity to review. If it's an appeal letter, I've just seen a lot that I don't think are overly effective. So if you are going to put the time and money into the paper, make sure it's really effective. And we'd be happy to help people with those and review what you're sending and just make sure they're really quality so that you are getting the biggest return that you can on those.
Excellent. So one thing I just, as sort of a comment and your thoughts on sort of in closing out, we're talking about being sort of overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to get time for our fundraising efforts and our strategies and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I tried to do when I was running MRFRS was always trying to pick a task I was doing and delegate one task a week out to somebody else, whether it was picking up one donation can or whether it was running a whole event or a program, but it always had to be one thing. So I was always comfortable with giving things away, so I didn't feel like I owned everything. And so just if that's somebody out there feeling overwhelmed, just to try one little thing, I'm not going to go in Sundays and check on the cats. I'm going to have someone else do it or something like that. Just to be comfortable with that, because it does come down to a team, certainly, from that standpoint. But you guys do executive recruitment. You said you do board member recruitment. Sounds like you do mentoring. Just to share a little bit with exactly what Humane Network does specifically, I think that this crowd would be interested in hearing about.
Diane, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Our efforts are all geared towards helping, ultimately to help organizations increase their life saving. That's ultimately what we're about. But that can look like a lot of different, come out in a lot of different ways, I should say. So obviously the fundraising supports that, and we help with executive recruitment and board recruitment that you mentioned, Stacy. It could be implementing new community programs or enhancing the programs that already exist. We do we've done strategic planning and facilitating meetings, doing training in really specific areas too, like animal behavior. Fundraising, we've done training and fundraising, just a variety of topics. And the way we work is that we have a group of experts that are part of our extended team that we bring to the table. So if we are going to work with an individual group and we'd understand really what their specific needs are, I mean, Bonnie and I have a lot of experience, but we're certainly not experts in everything, and can bring these other people to the table so that we're always bringing really top-notch experts, as well as employing and recommending industry best practices. So Bonnie, did you have something to add to that?
No, that was great. If someone's interested, you can check out our website. We have a list of all the different people we work with and the types of services that we provide. And we do just, well, we do help people all the time, but if you just wanted to reach out, we typically do a free 30-minute consultation with people to see if we can help, and if not, we give them advice on who can or what they could do.
Excellent. All right. Well, it is now noon. Bonnie and Diane, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it very much. And this was great information, lots of great comments. And make sure we share those with you later in the week when we get our reports. But I really thank you very much for tuning in and joining with us and presenting. So appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Stacy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.